Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today, we've got another video for you from the floor of dry dock number 3 here at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. Philadelphia Navy Yard is currently operated by North Atlantic Ship Repair, and they are doing the yard work on Battleship New Jersey. Today's video, we're going to talk about some of the welded repairs from one of Battleship New Jersey's earlier yard periods. My suspicion is 1987, but I can't confirm that for sure. So, over my shoulder here, you can see that the hull is heavily pitted. Off the top of my head, I can't remember how thick these plates are. They're probably somewhere around 3/4 of an inch, if I had to guess, about 30 pounds per square foot. And you can also probably see some areas that are abnormally raised and smooth. So those appear to be welded repairs that were done to the hull that we didn't notice until the old paint had been blasted off, the new paint had been blasted on, and the afternoon sun shined on it. And that really made it stand out and caused us to go and investigate it a little bit harder and see just what kind of repairs were made. So we found in a couple of places around the hull some circular holes, maybe about 1.5 inches wide at the largest, that had then been filled in with weld beads. Normally, I would say that that's a failed rivet that had been ring welded back together. We've got tons of those, it's very common. However, these are nowhere near banks of other rivets, and they tend to be in areas of the hull where there's significant deep pitting. What that tells me is this is not associated with the rivets. There were holes drilled in the hull. Why would there have been holes drilled in the hull? Why do I think they're holes drilled in the hull and not just holes that have wasted through? The fact that they're perfectly round makes me think that they're drill holes and not areas of wastage. So what I think happened is the Navy did invasive ultrasonic testing. I don't know that it's ultrasonic at that point, but they drilled holes in what they thought was the thinnest parts of the hull, and they used like a micrometer or something to gauge how thick the steel was. And then if the steel was still more than half of its own plate thickness, they probably just left it. If it had deteriorated to less than half of its plate thickness, they probably made those welded repairs that I'll talk about here in a minute. Remember, the shell plating of an Iowa-class battleship is just to keep the water out. The armor is on the inside. So one, the shell plating is not 12 inches thick, and two, we're not super worried about it being able to resist anything. Torpedoes, mines, enemy shells are going to blast through the shell plating, but the several thicker interior bulkheads are going to stop that explosion. So what I really think happened here is that the ship gets back from deployment, goes into her 1987 yard period, and they find that the cathodic protection has not been effective. This is why during that yard period, they more than triple the number of anodes on the ship and measure her for an impressed current system. This is also why we see so much pitting all over the hull. Because of all the pitting that they see, they do a bunch of drill shots to see how thick the plates are. Some of them they just weld back over that drill hole and call it good. Or maybe more practically, they tap it, they drill in the plug, and then they weld around that. Others, however, it seems like if the pitting was more than half of the plate thickness deep, then they came back and they ran a line of weld beads over the entire pitted area. And they just do this line after line after line, almost like a 3D printer building up. And then once they've got all of this line, it's kind of ridged like a recently tilled field. So they come back with a grinder or something and they plane it smooth again. So you see all these raised areas over here with the pitting around them. And then if you really zoom in on those raised areas, you can see that it hasn't been ground completely flush yet. There are still some lines that you can see from the individual weld marks. And so those archaeological evidences of previous work that we can see as we've peeled back the layers of the paint are informing us about the kinds of repairs that they did in 1987. We've been able to find some really great documentation from her inactivation yard period in 1990, but we have significantly less from 1987. So being able to go through with an archaeologist's eye and catalog the repairs that were made at that time are really going to help us determine what is needed during the next yard period 30 years from now. Because now we know that this exact plate right here, which I wrote down the exact name of it, it's something like JH, starboard side JH, but don't quote me on that. But now that we know that exact plate right there, we know that that's one that has had issues, has had repairs, and it's something that we can work on later. Also notice that the welded repairs are closer to the middle of the plate. They kind of stop towards the edges where you have those riveted seams, so they're not going to cause those riveted seams to burst open like we've seen in so many places around the ship. This area is really illustrative of the work that they did, but we found several other similar areas as we've gone around the hall. If you want to see these areas while they're exposed, be sure to get tickets for our dry dock tours. We've just posted a couple of new dates because of high demand. So check our Friday dates that are now available. Also check our dates in early June. Your purchasing of those tickets goes back into the repairs of the ship for the stuff that we found that we need to do this yard period. And we really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the ship more. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about the ship in the museum. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, as well as a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. Thanks for watching.